let's like bring people together so that they know, first of all, that nobody's impervious to experiencing hardship, but also that somebody else out there is going through that same thing in some way or form. And how can we help them? And so whether it was to make them feel less alone or give tips, or we have experts on to talk about dealing with those issues, it definitely became a major, and still is obviously a big passion project. So, we ended up calling it Next Page. I should probably tell you the title of it. Calling it Next Page, because it's kind of like the whole idea of turning to the next page, just moving on, but acknowledging what happened and hoping for kind of a better future.
Welcome to episode 42 of People Are the Answer. I truly believe that people are the only answer to the world's many problems. I'm Jeffrey M. Zucker, a serial entrepreneur, here to learn how innovators are creating outsized, transformational social impact. Today's episode features Laura Patrick, co-host of Next Page podcast, executive producer and in-house counsel at Four Corners Production, partner and chief marketing officer at Charleston's Bay Street Biergarten, and operating partner at Patrick Properties Hospitality Group. Laura is a force for good in her local community and beyond, working with the American Lung Association, 180 Place, and a variety of other organizations. Laura and I discuss her life and career journey, how overcoming great loss can be put to great use, her various business and media endeavors, volunteering and fundraising experience, and much more. Here is Laura Patrick on People Are the Answer. Laura, thanks so much for joining me on People Are the Answer.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I was really excited to chat with you today, and would love if you could just start out by sharing with the listeners, who you are, like where you're based, what your current role is.
So I am Laura Patrick. I am in Charleston, South Carolina for the most part, do a lot of hopping around for work, but I am currently kind of have my hands in everything. I am a restaurant owner. I'm an attorney. I'm also part of my family's hospitality business. I am a in-house counsel for a production company, a producer, and also have a podcast. So I'd say a lot of roles going on, but yeah. And then on top of that,
I certainly know how that goes.
yeah, right. I think I saw on your thing, serial entrepreneur. That's what they called me at the 40 under 40 thing. But a lot of, spend a lot of time with that. And then of course, love doing volunteer work. So that, I keep busy.
Love it. And in all of these things that you do, what would you say generally motivates you?
Well, I think for one is a little bit of ADD. I just feel like no, I'm joking, but I think it's honestly just making the most out of life, and then on top of that, keeping things interesting and always excited about a new project or a different thing. I don't think I could have ever done a desk job, and I have, but very, very badly and reluctantly. So it's kind of a variety aspect, but a lot of it also is just wanting to give my talents and things that I can offer to the world and make a difference in some way. So a lot of things that I'd say in general, the biggest motivations are just life, making the most of it and giving back.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And where did you grow up and what was it like there?
So I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina. It was an idyllic childhood. Started out in West Ashley area,
Which is where I grew up. Yep.
Oh yeah, so whoop whoop,
Yep.
let's go. But I'm not going to use the derogatory West Ashley talk that some people do.
Right.
I love me some West Ashley. I am back in West Ashley now. But we
Nice.
eventually, when I was in my early teens, we moved downtown. And I was very lucky to attend Buist Academy and then Academic Magnet. So which are both charter magnet schools. And I just had a great childhood. I was an entrepreneur early. I set up a lemonade stand every summer and forced my brother to run back and forth and get extra supplies. But all around, really, my parents are amazing, and they definitely didn't uh, they didn't spare any kind of expense, time, whatever, to make sure that we had a very good upbringing, as well as kind of traveling, all of that. So can't complain.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It sounds like it was a really good experience that got you prepared for the next steps in life. And, like I mentioned, also grew up in Charleston, and, I didn't stick around, but it must be exciting. I saw that you recently were named to the 40 under 40 by the Charleston Regional Business Journal.
Yeah, no, that was a huge honor, and honestly, once I was told about it, I didn't realize what a huge honor it was to begin with, to be honest. I kind of, thought of it as, oh, this is nice. I'm sure that they just, there's only 40 people that applied, whatever, or, or nominated, I guess, because I didn't apply, but they, in general, yeah, the whole concept is to recognize people for their their careers, their general professional successes, but also giving back to the community. And that was probably one of the most important things that I've kind of to be recognized for, honestly. And I recently got this distinguished humanitarian award, and that, I mean, I teared up when I got that, because it's always, nice to feel like you're making some kind of impact out there. So I definitely
Yeah.
had, I think I've said this several times, but I've had a little bit of imposter syndrome while I was sitting there with all of these people, though, because just incredible other honorees, if you will,
Yeah.
that had done. I mean, at some point, like, there are people that were like making, they started a hospital in Africa to help
Wow.
with, this or that. And I'm like, okay, well, I did a lot of things too, but not that. But it was an incredible experience, and I'm very grateful for it.
Well, from what I've learned, it sounds like it was much deserved, and glad you were able to get that honor. And you talked about growing up in Charleston, and are there any experiences from childhood that stand out that really showed you the importance of giving back?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say pretty much the entirety of my childhood, my parents have always been very active in philanthropy, and I don't think I really understood what that was when I was very young, but I did know there was a lot of board meetings, and there was a lot of different activities, and going to galas, and so I just assumed it was some kind of social thing that they did a lot. But once I kind of wrapped my mind around it, became very clear that my parents were very adamant about doing well, like basically giving back to people because of their upbringing. They grew up very, um, I won't say poor, but they didn't have a lot of money. And my dad is an attorney, and he was a part of the taking down the tobacco companies. So he was an integral part in that, which is already pretty amazing. Some big shoes to fill, but he, once they got that settlement, which is the biggest settlement to date, for something, for a tort, or I think at all, any settlement. But they made a very conscious effort to use that money to help, and to give back. And I think one of the main things was when they started our foundation, like our family foundation. They essentially, I mean, I think we're now going on like 20 years or something of this foundation. But, obviously when I first started it, I was like, what does that even mean? What's going on? But ultimately, I saw that they had very big interest in taking everything they could, and trying to spread it around, and to, basically make sure that this wasn't just going to go to, well, I can tell you for sure it didn't go to a private jet, even though I asked for one. But it was, just very much ingrained in them, and they did a very good job of, kind of ingraining into me. But, just my dad's always had a passion for social justice, and looking at other people and seeing their circumstances, and that he feels kind of an obligation to to lift them up and to help them out. And I think, one of the things that's honestly a funny story, and I'll say maybe is one of the more impactful, was I remember one day the doorbell ringing and we were at dinner, and my dad gets up, goes answer it. It turns out it's a homeless guy, and not a lot of homeless people are ringing on people's doorbells, but especially near the Battery. So that's kind of an affluent area of Charleston. So they, basically he came back in, and my mom goes, "Did you give him money again?" And he was like, It's nothing. It's nothing." And come to find out that this was a kind of a ritual that had developed where he had met this guy in the street, and every once in a while he would come and ask for like $5, $10, and he would give it to them. And it was never even a question. He didn't get freaked out about somebody coming to the door to beg for money, or have that attitude of like, oh, well, if you give them something, they're going to keep coming back. Like, he's like, dude, keep coming back. Like, I want to help. So that was a big thing. And then just factor in the fact that my mom is a neonatologist, my dad's an attorney who took down tobacco companies. That to me was two very honorable, but like, careers and professions to make a difference.
I'm sure that seeing your dad, treating everyone like the human being that they are, regardless of their circumstance, probably wear it off on you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and I even joked today, he's the guy that will let tourists come in and use his bathroom. And then my mom's just like, this is getting out of hand. But
That's great.
yeah, it is. I think it's a great characteristic. So if I can just do a fraction of what they've done, I will be happy with myself.
So once you finished at Academic Magnet, you went to College of Charleston?
Yeah, I actually started out at UGA for a semester. I was a little bit, I won't say homesick or anything like that. It was just such a massive school.
Yeah.
I kind of went in a weird way because I wanted to go to like a football school. Like, I wanted
Yeah.
the epitome of a college experience. And I got there, and after graduating with 92 other people from high school to going to a school with, that many people, it was just overwhelming to be in a classroom of 500 people. And generally, just didn't vibe with it a lot, as far as it didn't have like the community feel that I was kind of used to. So my plan was really to come to College of Charleston to get a couple of credits so that I could transfer to NYU. But once I came back, I realized that it was very different to to grow up in Charleston and then to experience college in Charleston. So I felt like that sense of community really was here. And so I decided to stay. Um, and I loved it. I really loved College of Charleston. I think that I think in a way, I know there are tons of people that come here from out of state, but I think if you're from Charleston, you're kind of like, oh, I want to get out of here. Like, I gotta go see the wider world or whatever. But it was an amazing experience. I have to say, they gave so many opportunities for studying abroad, which was what I really took advantage of, since CFC itself was very much less expensive than going to UGA. But it also gave me kind of this love of the journalism, communication, media, all these things. I was a public speaking tutor, and all around, just kind of it was much more formative and fun than I could have ever really imagined.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I like that perspective of, growing up in the city is very different from going to college there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, even though we are like I'd say 2 miles from my parents' house, it was like I never saw them. Like, it was a different world being above Calhoun Street. So
Right.
it was very different. And it was great to see people come into the city that really loved it, that weren't from here. It gave me a different perspective of Charleston, I think.
Yeah.
Because when you grow up, you kind of grow up here, you kind of take it for granted a little bit, I think.
I saw sorry, you mentioned that you got interested in journalism while you were at CFC. I know you did some internships in that space. What drew you to journalism, and then what sort of led you away from it?
Yeah, so I was really into. I've always been a writer. I love writing. I'm always curious and I'm always wanting to get to the bottom of things. I've always been very interested in, reading as much as I can. Time magazines were all over my room, National Geographics. Like I was just kind of drawn to the idea of documenting other people's lives and just getting different perspectives and also kind of getting to the truth, getting to the heart of the matter, if you will. And so, yeah, I ultimately did a communications mass media concert major at College of Charleston, and it was a great experience. I learned so many valuable things. But after a few of my internships at some places that, and it's no fault of these of the publications or anything. And one was at the city paper. I had a great time. But there were sometimes that I just didn't feel comfortable with kind of the agenda that was being made by the editors. So, at one point I was asked to go around and ask everybody on the street what their job was and how much money they made.
Really?
And I was told from a very young age that that was not a cool thing to do. So I just refused. I was just like, I'm not going to do that. That just seems unnecessary and weird. I think another intern did end up doing it, but I just kind of felt as though I wasn't going to make as much of a change or an impact doing that. It seemed very much like a long crawl up to what you hope would get there. And at that time, there wasn't really things like doing your own thing, blogs, or doing your own podcast or anything like that. So it felt like that one path of writing for a newspaper or a magazine not only felt like it was going to be a long, long journey to maybe possibly get to where I wanted to, but also a little bit of a dying breed because at that point, the internet is coming up like fast and there was, not as much print, but I even continue even after I kind of decided to move away from that. I still love to write and I've written for various other papers and stuff like that since then. It's still something I find very fulfilling, just not as like my primary career.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and sure you learned a lot when you were sort of looking into that industry, and then you ended up at law school.
Yeah, so I think kind of that was my, I had like a gap year, if you will, of
Hmm.
reflection of what I was going to do next. And I started as an administrative assistant at the Charleston School of Law, just to have something to do while I figured what the next move was. And I didn't know if that was going to be business, going to get my MBA or to get involved with my parents' hospitality business or what it was. But I quickly kind of realized while being there that it wasn't that much of a step from journalism to become a lawyer. You're kind of doing the same thing. You're kind of like looking at a bunch of information all over the place and you're trying to get to like the bottom of it. And that also, you in journalism, you can do the same thing in law, is that you can argue a different point, a different perspective. And it also certainly didn't hurt that my mom used to always say, you'll make an excellent lawyer someday, because apparently I was very good at arguing as a child.
Yeah.
But I felt drawn to do that because it seemed like a very good way to help people. Honestly, I know a lot of people, and I'm not even trying to be like downplay it. I know a lot of people go in for the money or for just prestige, whatever. I figured it would really just be a great way if you look at it the right way and you use it for good and not evil, that a way of helping others. So that's where I ultimately decided. I took the LSAT and did well and then was pumped to go.
And I believe you went to law school on the other coast, right? On the West Coast?
I did. I kind of figured since I didn't branch out that much in college that I should probably do so in law school. An interesting move I learned later because a lot of law school, you learn the law in that state. So
Mm.
it was interesting to come back and kind of relearn some of that. But yeah, I had a few opportunities with scholarships but Miami and University of San Diego were my top two, and I went and visited San Diego and just fell in love with it. It was just like, I like to call it the Charleston of California. It's the place that people that go there, they never leave. There's different beaches. It's just a wonderful attitude. And I figured if I'm going to be working my butt off, I might as well, be in a nice atmosphere while I did it. So it was good to kind of get out of Charleston. And at that point I had studied abroad a lot, so was always more interested in seeing different areas. And I realized at that point I hadn't really seen a lot of the United States. So it was an amazing experience. And I've been texting with a bunch of my fellow classmates recently this past week. And everybody really went on to do amazing things. And and while I was there, that very much solidified my position of wanting to help others via the law.
And so then what was sort of your next move after law school?
So at the end of my law school career, I was working traditionally in law school, you have some sort of internship, externship, junior associate kind of thing during the summer. And then if you are feeling very brave, you can do the same thing during the school year. And my third year, I had a little bit more time. So I was working, or I guess, I was volunteering really at a place called New Media Rights. And it's basically a nonprofit that helps people helps creators and business owners to get their businesses up and running, to get their content out there uh, for nothing. So that you're getting these things done. It was very much focused on Creative Commons. So trying to work as a community to help other musicians and artists and all of that. So I got very interested, really into that. So my plan was honestly to kind of bring that idea back to Charleston. And so I came back and, of course I had to take the bar first. Took the bar, certain I failed it, didn't, which is great. But I, in the meantime, was looking into like other intellectual property lawyers because that was my concentration. And I found very early on, as a lot of things in Charleston, we're a little bit behind. So there wasn't a whole lot of intellectual property going on here. I mean, there was business formation and stuff like that, but all the tech companies that are here now were not here. There was not, I remember there's one IP lawyer that wasn't a patent attorney. And I think I called him like 5 times and he never picked up. Like I just wanted like some kind of connection or a mentor or something, because I knew that was going to be kind of a massive undertaking to do a whole nonprofit that was surrounding this. So I kind of just gave up on that idea. And in the meantime, got very interested in my parents' hospitality business. And I was also, again, considering getting an MBA. So I actually was planning to go to College of Charleston for their 1-year accelerated MBA program, which is an awesome program, by the way.
You must have loved school.
I love school. I am such a nerd.
Yeah.
Like I get jealous when other people tell me that they're like getting their PhDs and doing, homework. I'm a nerd. But and when in doubt, just go back to school was my thought. But during that time, I ended up meeting a friend who was talking about how he was interested in starting a bar, and that was in a part of a venture that fell through, and I was like, well, let's do it. Like I think that's a great idea. And I had just coming from San Diego, there was the craft beer boom was going on, and I could just, you can kind of see as things happen and progress, they kind of start on the West Coast and then slowly make their way to the East Coast. So we're starting to see the beginnings of that with like Westbrook Brewery. And so, I was very much on board with like, let's get ahead of the times. Let's start this like fill a hole that wasn't in Charleston at that time, which was kind of a craft beer place that was very like family friendly and open and spacious. And so that's where, the idea for the beer garden, for Bay Street Biergarten came from. And, my partner Greg and I brought on another buddy, Ryan Workman, and we just went for it. We kind of just dove head first. Both Greg and I were going to go to get our MBAs, and we both were like, nope, let's just do this instead.
I mean,
And
having run a restaurant, I can tell you it's basically an MBA in itself. So,
I know, I was like, I guess I could always go back, but like, what's the point? Now I already know a lot of these things that I had to learn the hard way. But in its own little way, I felt like it was contributing to Charleston is such a big restaurant centered place and hospitality and all of that. So it felt like kind of my way of contributing to that area of what was going on. And I also really love the idea of giving people jobs and creating that kind of environment of, a community and, there's lots of little drawbacks of owning a restaurant.
yeah.
It is no easy feat, but I just knew that I did not have any interest in kind of, like I said, being in a desk doing, reading memos all the time. I
Yeah.
knew that my law degree was going to help me with business, and I knew this was not going to be my only business, but it was a starting point. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a crazy, looking back, a very crazy thing to kind of just like have no knowledge other than what I had seen in my parents' hospitality business and going into it. But
I'm curious, like with your family's hospitality business, at the point at which you were working on the beer garden, had you, what was your experience level in hospitality, like through your family?
I mean, a lot of it was really just observation because, I grew up kind of running around kitchens because of their business. So that's another thing that they did once they got the settlement was they really wanted to buy like invest in properties on Upper King Street, which in Charleston was an area at that time that was not doing so well. But there was lots of historical buildings that were kind of falling into disrepair. And that's something my mom was very passionate about, was kind of restoration. And, her dad was a contractor, so she's into that. And so they bought the American Theater, which was at that time, very much falling apart. It was built like for uh, basically military to come and watch movies in the 1920s and 30s. So it was a very cool building, but needed a lot of work, and ultimately decided to turn it into a cinema grill. And I was, just there all the time watching, running around the kitchen, seeing, how the excitement of everything coming and going, seeing people happy. Probably didn't focus on the unhappy people as much, but at that point, there really wasn't, because of my lack of direct experience, really a place for me yet at Patrick Properties, because it was such a once the Cinema Grill opened, then we ended up opening up Fish, which is a restaurant as well. It's no longer with us, but became Parcel 32, which is a restaurant I ultimately ended up helping open. And then that's when it started to kind of grow into these different properties where you could have events and weddings and anything, corporate events, whatever. And it was just that feeling of excitement of, right, the rush of it's about to begin, everybody's about to be here. And I had done a lot of pretty much everything that I was participating in college and in law school. I was definitely the event planner, like the person that put everything together. And the same for just my friends. It was always everybody come to my house. So I figured, why don't we just get everybody out of my house and into another restaurant? But yeah, honestly, it was kind of a way, I think, for me to prove to myself that I could independently do that. And then and then kind of come back and see what how that could help my parents' business ultimately.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And um, how long since the beer garden's opened?
So we just celebrated our ninth anniversary. So we will.
Congratulations.
Thank you, which I think everybody can kind of appreciate considering the this little thing that recently happened called the pandemic, and we, it's been a lot of ups and downs, but ultimately
It's a
we
very tough business.
it is. It's a very tough business, and there's always, especially in Charleston, a new restaurant opening every day, and just for how many that are opening, there's one closing. So there was something that my business advisor slash mentor kind of told me at that time was, the first year is going to be the hardest, and then if you make it after the third year, then you're good. So it's definitely a gamble, but I think that just our collective passion for it has kept it going. We're very hands on and very much want to have relationships with our staff and get a feel for what's going on, be participating in all these kind of events, and also hosting a lot of philanthropy events and a lot of groups to charities to come in, and that also is amazing. Like to have that platform to do that is great. But yeah, we made it through the pandemic, and we are actually currently looking for the home of our second location. So that's also very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. I mean, 9 years in the restaurant industry is no joke. And um, so I was going to ask if you were looking at potentially opening more, and it sounds like that's the case.
Yeah.
What led you to that, and like, what's your vision?
So originally, when we opened, I think we were so gung ho about it all that we were like, okay, year after year one, second location, like that's going to happen. But as you know, it's a tough business. That wasn't really in the cards just after a year, and it's not like we were part of this big restaurant group or anything. So we ended up kind of putting it off a little bit, and then life just kind of happened. Like my partners and I started having babies, and I at one point was my ex-husband was in the army, so we were sent to Germany for 2 years in a somewhat appropriate or ironic, I'm not sure, way from the beer. So I wasn't at the beer garden, but I was doing some R&D in Germany.
Yeah,
So it really was our our thinking was right after I kind of came back from that was let's go ahead and do it. And then not too long after the pandemic hit. So
yeah.
that's really the only reason we haven't done a second location earlier.
I mean, having the 9 years under your belt's only going to make the next one better. I've seen restaurants that try to open new ones too quickly, and just the first one isn't ready, isn't perfect yet, and so it's just that one falls
Yeah.
apart. And so I think you
Yeah.
guys having that time is going to be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, even when we went into the first one, like how many things we had to do to like basically fall on our faces to figure out. Like I could not have imagined just thinking in our cockiness that we could just go and do a second one right out of the gate. Like there's so many things that have changed since when we first opened. I mean, we started with tap tables and over time realized, okay, well, that's way more of a pain in the butt than we're willing to keep going with. And just streamlining it all. And then you build also a better foundation for your original location that helps you to recruit people and for the next one. But you also have people, we have people that have been with us since, year one. And so that's awesome that they believe in us enough for that one, but two, that we feel now like extremely trusting that those people can still keep the first one going. So yeah, I mean our
Yeah,
vision essentially is to kind of bring the same vibe to the next location. And we're looking at West Ashley right now, just saying.
yeah,
So
awesome,
yeah, and I think that's really, we just want to keep that community vibe going. That's always been our goal.
awesome. Well, I look forward to keeping track of the progress, and hopefully checking out the new location as well.
We would love to have you. You can have several beers on me.
Much appreciated. And at what point in this, as you were gaining your experience, did you start doing work with your family's hospitality group?
So about interestingly, it was during the time I was in Germany. I basically we had a situation where our CEO had to resign, and we were in the midst of changing over Fish, the restaurant, to a new concept, Parcel 32, but there wasn't really anybody to do that. Like everybody else that worked there was very much in the wedding event side of things. And so I was kind of recruited, if you will, by everybody to come in and help open the restaurant and also kind of, just be the representative for the family in the business because, as much as my parents are great about delegating, but they had no interest in being hands-on with any of it. So it was just kind of an opportunity for people to feel more connected to the family as a whole, because we knew a lot of people really just liked the feel and the idea of working with our family, which is amazing, and I think says a lot about my parents. But yeah, ultimately I came in to open that restaurant, and it was quite a different experience than the beer garden, but, a little bit same, but different. Like, there were definitely things that I knew, where we needed to be, what our goals were, how to survive in this market. And so it ultimately Parcel 32 did very well. It's gorgeous. It's awesome. During the pandemic, unfortunately, it was just the numbers weren't making sense at that point, and we've done so well with all of our wedding venues that it is now an event venue. So it's still beautiful and gorgeous and there and available for anybody to have any events, but it's no longer a restaurant. But that's how I got in, and now they just can't get rid of me. So
Well, I like that pivot. I mean, I think that's a good market in terms of event venues, especially in an event-centric city like Charleston. Um, and I looked through the website earlier. It looks like you guys have some amazing properties. Like any in particular that you want to mention?
oh, well, for sure. I mean, there's obviously the American Theater, awesome. Every one of our places kind of has that. They're all restored or preserved to their look in the late 1800s. So there's very historical feel. But William Aiken House is an amazing property. It's got ballrooms, it's got outdoors, it's got everything.
I've been
And
there
then
for a
Lounge
wedding.
Grove. Oh, and did you have fun?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great venue.
Good, good. Well,
And yeah, Lowndes Grove I've been to, I think, for a wedding as well.
yeah. Oh my gosh. And Lowndes Grove is just, I remember the day my parents, I was studying in Florence, and my parents wrote me an email. It was a very casual email that was like, oh, well, we're thinking about, this is going on, that's going on, and we're thinking about buying this plantation. And I was like, what? Like, what? Are you out of your mind? Come to find out, it's not really a plantation. It's a much smaller plot of land that was a part of a much bigger plantation, which is now Hampton Park. But it's just gorgeous, and it's now actually the filming one of the filming locations for Outer Banks for anybody out there that watches that. And they have made, they've done some crazy things there. They've turned that house into all kinds of things. They blew up a boat off the
Oh,
dock,
wow.
all of that. So it's in American Theater was in the Notebook. So clearly
Yep.
these are some good spots to go. So yeah, that makes up the majority of our kind of group of properties.
That's awesome. That's a great portfolio, and I'll definitely keep you in mind if I ever plan any events in Charleston.
Yes, please do. And that, I mean, we're growing right now, which is great. So that's something that, we're definitely developed a some like an internal planning department, which is doing really, really well. And for anybody that's ever dealt with weddings or any of this stuff, there's a lot of room for things to go wrong. And so before we were kind of letting a lot of, we still do, but people bringing in outside wedding planners, and then we'd kind of have to like pick up the slack if there was something missing. And we thought, like this is a good opportunity for us to kind of increase our standards and to give people the best experience they can have. So that's another way that I've kind of been involved with is trying to expand that, and it's gone really well, and it ties into College of Charleston because they've now got a hospitality program, and so we try to get people from there, funnel them in, do some what we can with that. So
I love that.
it's really been an awesome experience. Yeah.
That's exciting, and it sounds like you're doing some great work in hospitality. And then, you also have a whole arm of work in the digital media space. What initially drew you there?
I think that probably it's very tightly related to my journalism interest in the beginning, and
Hmm.
kind of my draw to help creative. I've just always
It's
been,
like full circle.
yeah, it was like a very much a full circle thing of like, okay, well, I went to law school, decided that like, being in a courtroom or sitting at a desk wasn't really my jam. Always still thinking about the intellectual property aspect. Like I've always been very creative as far as, I had to do a thesis at Academic Magnet, and mine was a documentary about local musicians, which is still kind of hysterical to me to this day that these people will let me into these venues when I'm like 17 years old and on a Wednesday night or whatever. But I, just always been drawn to that. So once I, saw basically that you could be involved with it without being a singer, a performer, whatever. I just felt that for one was always going to be something that I was going to get involved in. I didn't really know how. And then like kind of the podcast boom happened of like, I'd always loved radio. I'd considered going into radio, and then podcasts came out, and I was like, this is amazing. Like you can just do this, you can make your own thing. Like this is fabulous. And I had also been running our social media accounts, been doing a lot of digital media in general, as far as I had a short stint with a blog, which, well, I probably need to take down at some point, but it was just always drew me in. And so I was bothering my friends like all the time around, a few years ago, just being like, just start a podcast with me. Just do a podcast. I just want to help people with the podcast. And everybody's like, ha ha ha, you're so funny. And I was like, but I'm serious. And then I ran into an old friend who was living in the West Coast, but we kind of grew up together in Charleston. He went to School of the Arts. And so we had kind of a catch up one day, and he had come to Charleston because he was living in LA and was a little bit like claustrophobic at that point because LA was completely still shut down and Charleston was
Mm.
starting to open up a little bit. So he came in, and we were supposed to have lunch, and it ended up being lunch, happy hour, dinner, like 8 hours of us just talking because so much in the period of time that we had seen each other had happened. And I had gone through a divorce. He was going through some rocky things. I had a lot of family that had passed away during the pandemic. I was dealing with a lot of kind of trauma at that time. And I just so happened to mention my desire to start a podcast, and he said, oh, my brother and I have a production company. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? He's like, yeah, we have a production. We can do this. And I was like, are you being like, don't mess with me right now. But we both decided that would be the perfect kind of topic is trauma recovery, and how, and talking about these issues, and the fact that I was always fascinated during the pandemic about the psychological impacts that would have. Like, of course, the medical and everything, economical, all the things that came from it are interesting or sad or whatever in their own way. But I could always just think about, especially me and my two small kids being holed up in our house. It was impacting me for sure. I was like losing my mind. And I know some people took it as kind of a break, whereas I'm not don't know if you noticed, not really great at taking breaks. So I, it definitely impacted me. And then to go through 4 losses in my family in 1 year and all that, it was like, you know, this is stuff we should be talking about. This is stuff that shouldn't be, stuffed down. And also just the mental health impact and what I was kind of seeing around in general, as far as um, the statistics about suicide with younger people, and just kind of destigmatizing the whole concept, and showing also that there are so many people out there, no matter what they look like, how successful they are, that are going through or have overcome really intense stuff. And so that was the premise, really, was to kind of take the veil off of what seemingly like the Joneses are doing, that everybody has this picture perfect social media view of. Is like, no, like let's like bring people together so that they know, first of all, that nobody's impervious to experiencing hardship, but also that somebody else out there is going through that same thing in some way or form, and how can we help them. And so whether it was to make them feel less alone, or give tips, or we have experts on to talk about dealing with those issues, it definitely became a major, and still is obviously a big passion project. So the we ended up calling it Next Page. I should probably tell you the title of it. Calling it Next Page, because it's kind of like the whole idea of turning to the next page, just moving on, but acknowledging what happened, and hoping for kind of a better future. And it has really been, I think when it first started, I was like, this is exciting. I hope that everybody listens and is obsessed with it, that it just like goes crazy or whatever. But honestly, just doing it without having that kind of feedback, and you and I have talked about this, how it's kind of hard to get feedback with a podcast. The analytics of it are insane, but just the experience of it, of talking to so many people and connecting with so many people that have also been through insane things, but also, have like they've overcome. We just released our our first episode of our second season, which was with Frank Mink, who is an amazing individual. He's a former neo-Nazi. I don't know if you know about the movie American History X, but it was based on him, essentially. And he was a very hardcore racist, neo-Nazi white supremacist who ended up going to prison, and then making friends through sports with a lot of Black people and other people, gay people. And when he came out, he was, back with his old, group of his gang group, and listening to them. And he's just like, y'all sound so stupid. Like, this is all stupid. And then he ended up getting a job with a Jewish man that basically changed his life. And he decided that he was wrong. He was wrong about all of it. And a big part that led to that, the whole thing, was that he had a very abusive childhood. And so he was looking for something. He was looking for anything that would make him feel like he belonged. And he said, kind of off air, but he was like, it could have been a cult, it could have been anything. It just so happened to be that. And that it kind of just shows you that that's where things that this can impact that can impact that leads to this. But ultimately he did find his way back, and now he is an interventionist for neo-Nazis, and like to get them out. And he also, speaks publicly. He helps, for a while he was helping the FBI kind of understand the neo-Nazi movement, how it worked, where people were, how they were recruiting. And then more recently we discovered he was Jewish. So he is now, he speaks at his synagogue, and he just came out, I guess, quote unquote, to a synagogue, that he was a former white supremacist. So it's
Wow.
an incredible story. And
I mean, yeah, sounds like an amazing guest whose voice we really need to hear right now. with what's going on in our society.
Yeah, I think that was also a huge driver of this whole thing was that just how divided everybody was. And to a point still is. But just the isolation, the division, and it's like I just want to do whatever I can to get rid of that, to make people feel connected again.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and I really look forward to listening to that episode.
It's a good one. And I do Todd and I cry at the end, so just be prepared.
I'm glad we got the warning, and I'll make sure to include all the various links in the show notes so people can go check that out. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think it's been really cool to see what you guys are doing. I've listened to a few episodes now, and you know, how do you build on it from here? You guys have really built something nice and enjoyable and thoughtful and meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just at a point of trying to get more perspectives, different, kind of uh, just different rides of people's lives, different kind of experts. Really, a lot, because in the beginning, a lot of it was just kind of who we knew. Let's just get who we know. And now that we have kind of we have some good, amazing. I mean, every one of our guests has been incredible, but we to have that kind of under our belts, I think we have a little bit more credibility now. So we actually have people like reaching out to us, which is amazing. And if anybody listening to this wants to be a guest, like please feel free to reach out. We love that. And we're, really we don't try to pigeonhole it. So like you have to have gone through something out of this world. And you don't even have to have gone through something. You could be, it's just somebody that's, we had a neuroscientist, or one of my friend's dads, who's a neuroscientist, and we talked about addiction and how that works in the brain. And I think right now we're just really trying to expand as much as we can to get a broader message out there and to draw more people in and just to overall, I think that for all podcasts, I think the goal is to get as many listeners as possible. But I think overall, there's some things that we want to kind of mess with, maybe get a video element going, or just work on that. But it's not only been a great thing in and of itself, but it's also kind of lend itself to our production company and help, growing our contacts slash just projects out there. And, we're very interested in doing more documentaries and things like that deal with similar issues. So there's a lot of room for growth, and we're really excited about it.
Well, that's a good segue. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about Four Corners Production, what it really is and, what you're up to there in addition to the podcast.
Yeah, so we are definitely it's more of a fledgling, we're in our baby stages. But it was started by my co-host Todd and his brother Chris, and they had a vision for, basically getting involved with kind of whatever they could in the beginning, because it's hard to be picky when you're just starting out with that kind of thing. And so once I came along, we started focusing on some more kind of like documentary, social, looking into societal issue kind of ideas. Unfortunately, a lot of the things, and we talked about this before, unfortunately, a lot of the things are not so much public yet. We can't really talk
Yep.
about them because they're in the works or we're negotiating. But I can just say that in general, it is an awesome endeavor and a great way to also, like, it feels a little full circle as well to get the
Yeah.
message out and to just connect with people. So I think that we have big things ahead of us, and we're already, kind of in talks with some people about some projects that people will probably see very, very soon. But I think that's probably all I'm allowed to say on the topic.
Yeah. No, I totally get how that goes in that
Yeah.
arena. And you know, uh, Todd that's who you spent the 8 hours talking with before you decided to do the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it's great to work with him and working with his brother? How are they as partners?
Oh, great. I mean, I'm kind of used to this dynamic at this point with like my two business partners at the beer gardens, two dudes and me. And then at Patrick Properties, we've got our, amazing executive director, Amber, and Steve is our fabulous CFO. And so there's kind of this like triangle thing there too. So the dynamic is great. It's kind of, I think with all businesses, it's always good to have different people from different backgrounds that kind of have different expertise. And that's something I find like with Todd and I, and as well as Chris, is that, I kind of bring the more practical, uh, obviously the attorney aspect, the legalities, all of that. And then, Todd is more creative. He's a singer, he's a performer. He's currently performing on many cruise ships over the next 2 months. Otherwise he would be on here with me. So hi, Todd. Love you. Wish you were here.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, we look forward to having him sometime.
yeah, it's been a very like growing experience. I mean, we've, even amongst ourselves of Todd and I navigating through this together and being on two different coasts because he's in LA and I'm in Charleston. So time difference and scheduling and everything. But, those different connections really help you find different people, different experiences, and doing good work. I mean, like we ended up talking to a man not too long ago who, is trying to do more documentaries about child trafficking and things like that to just better the world. And that's just amazing to just meet people like that, let alone get
Yeah.
to work with them. So it's a great dynamic for sure.
And you guys are very much, part of those efforts to improve the world. And I think digital media plays a big role. And especially in this day and age, it's one of the few ways to keep people's attention. And,
Right.
um, you know, how do you see digital media as being, impactful in the future?
Man, I don't see how it couldn't be. I mean, at this point, everybody's, I think my parents are the only people I know right now who still have cable. I mean, it's like, it's, everything is moving that way. And it's a great way to find people with far reaches of the earth to speak to. The internet in of itself has really just, I mean, taken over. I mean, everybody, there's a lot of people that use it for just TikTok or whatever you want to call, any little like social media, but I think it just has so much potential to get messages farther and wider, and if used correctly, to bring people together. There are some things that concern me, obviously. I mean, I believe in free speech. I do not believe in hate speech. So that's a little bit tricky when, I mean, obviously we can see with kind of what's going on with Twitter right now and
Yeah.
all of that. There is some room for, uh, improvement. However, it's something that's hard to police, and so that's always going to be a challenge. However, it's kind of a representation of the free market in a way that everybody has a chance to put their voice out there and to create content and get, their own films out there, to get, anything and everything. So I definitely think it's the not just the future. I think it's now. And I think
Yeah.
it's something that, at the very least, a way for us all to have if you can find people with a common goals and use that to connect. And the world is getting smaller. So that definitely it helps to move whatever kind of agenda that you have forward.
Yeah. Agreed. And Um, you mentioned a little bit about you and your family's philanthropic work, and I know you guys have worked in conservation as well as supporting local artists. Could you tell me more about some of that work?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we have a foundation that, we that foundation has kind of specific guidelines of what we want to give back to, which is a lot of arts, a lot of, just social platforms and social injustice, and But we're not, not we're not going to just like you have to be within that to for us to help. But that's kind of where that is focused a lot. However, I've kind of found that if you're going to do it, like, or volunteer and work with these charities, you might as well do something that you are personally passionate about. And so I started out doing volunteer work and being on a committee for 180 Place, which is a homeless shelter here in Charleston. That's not just a homeless shelter. It's like a rehabilitative, like, living space. So, in order to go there, you have to do drug screenings. They help you find a job. They help you, basically just get back on your feet, which I think is, a big difference between just providing a shelter. It's to kind of get to the heart of the problem of a lot of these people, are just, they're veterans, or they're women that are leaving abusive relationships, or some people that just have untreated disorders. And so the biggest thing is to just, instead of putting a band-aid on it, is to try to fix the problem. So that's kind of where my personal volunteer work kind of ramped up. And then since then, I've just, my brother and my former, it's not my former, but my late sister-in-law, who unfortunately passed away at 32 from cervical cancer, was very involved with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and so definitely felt a draw to be involved with them. But most recently, have really gotten involved with the American Lung Association, which is something that my dad has always been very passionate about. Obviously, as a, it's kind of a side thing to suing the tobacco companies, I suppose. But it started out as they wanted a quote unquote celebrity dancer for this event they put on every year, which is called the Oxygen Ball. And they kind of do the same idea as Dancing with the Stars, but it's with local people. And they pair you up with a dancer, and you learn a dance, and then you perform it in front of way too many people. But the point is to also raise money during that time, and the winner is actually decided by how much money you raise. So that was a really cool idea to me, because it was like I got to do the dancing part, but also, fundraise and not just make a fool of myself out there. And ultimately was able to raise roughly, well, a little bit over $60,000 for them, and took home the trophy, which is amazing. And my dance partner is amazing. And now I'm addicted, and I'm still doing ballroom dance. So
I love that.
yeah, I just think my parents are very heavily involved in Trident United Way. I mean, the list goes on and on. It would probably take up the rest of this podcast, but
I can
yeah,
imagine.
that's, as I said before, they've really instilled in me that that's an important part of life. And that if you have the ability to, that's giving back is the way to contribute. And you can't just be, obviously your job, your profession, whatever it is great. And lots of people they can't afford to do as much as we can, but it is something that's very deeply ingrained in me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to hear. And yeah, I've been to a couple of the oxygen balls, as you probably know. My
Oh, you
mom,
have? I
has
did not know
participated
that.
in it.
Yes. Oh
Yeah,
my
my
gosh,
mom's
yes.
participated in a variety, and she's really into ballroom dancing. So
I love seeing her at the studio. Oh my gosh, I love seeing her at the studio, and she's such a trooper. She had just had
she
surgery
had
and
back
was
surgery.
out there dancing, and yeah, and that's inspiring in and of itself. So, and she's a amazing person who's also somebody who gives back tremendously in the community and in South Carolina. So, yeah, definitely shout out to your mom. She's a badass.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. I appreciate it, and yeah, no problem at all. I'm sure she'll appreciate it, and I appreciate it. And there's certainly big shoes to fill, and I work to honor her and my dad's memory, and everything that I do.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's amazing. I think we're probably very much in the same shoes, if you
Yes.
will, big shoes of, trying to do what we can to build on that legacy that
Exactly.
they've made and continue to do, which is amazing.
Agreed. And yeah, thanks so much for sharing that and amazing work that you're doing. And I'll include some of those links as well. Um, as you've been doing all of this work in the community, is there any story that comes to mind of when you really saw how your work was affecting change?
I would say one kind of experience that really sticks in my mind is going to 180 Place and volunteering. I got there to just serve food from the kitchen, and I noticed when I went to check in that whoever had checked in before me hadn't signed out. And I go to look at it, and it is Hamida to Patrick, which is my brother's sister, or my brother's wife. So just so happened, out of total happenstance, me and Hamida happened to be there at the same time to feed the hungry. And while we were doing that, it was amazing to me because Hamida had just she's gorgeous and had such an amazing smile. And honestly, just to see these people's eyes light up when, there's not only somebody giving them food, but, that they're sparkling personalities coming out, they're pretty and, just have good hearts. Like all these people that I work with on all these things are just such beautiful people inside and out. And so that was just kind of one of those wonderful moments of like, oh, you're here to feed the hungry too? Me too. And then as we stood there and see all the people that come through, it, you can see how much of a difference of like literally getting the last donut that's there, the thrill of that, or people that haven't been able to come in for weeks because they were, in just in a really bad place and finally were able to get it together and come back. But overall, that it's just seeing it's always nice to see it directly in front of you, because it's one thing to give money or to raise money and you don't really get to see those people that do it. But when you're kind of hands on, it's a beautiful thing. And I will say too, as far as, even when I was younger, I did Habitat for Humanity. That was an incredible experience of seeing like the families come and actually getting to see their home uh, that for the first time, and coming from, probably sleeping in one room somewhere or maybe even being at 180 Place. So yeah, I'd say that is always the most rewarding for me, is to see it face to face.
Yeah, it's truly impactful and just makes the work that much more worth doing. And appreciate those efforts. And it sounds like you've learned a lot along the way. It sounds like your parents have been super impactful in that. Is there anyone else that you've considered a mentor as you've gone through your career?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's, kind of been it takes a village. I think there's a large group of people that have very much impacted my life and given me lots of advice, help. I mean, even, Amber and Steve at Patrick Properties, when we were going through the pandemic, like we were all in this together, but they were so great about helping work through these problems of how do you have a party of so and so many people in a parking lot because now nobody can be inside. How do you put that together without people being, while people would be 6 feet apart? It was just crazy. But I'd say one of my biggest mentors is definitely my Wyatt Henderson, who is somebody that he's worked for my parents for a very long time as far as being our CPA and business advisor. And I think a big thing about with him is that when I came to him to kind of be like, I want to start this bar, I want to, which doesn't sound super glamorous, but he was like, all right, let's do it. And he just like not like, he didn't hold my hand, but he laid the foundations out for what is important, like what the importance of a break even, the importance of, maintaining, your relationship with your partners as well as your staff. I mean, he's the first person I call if anything is going awry. I mean, it's just like because I know that at the end of the day, at least he's there for me as a person, but also he has the answers. It's just, if you talk about people
Right.
have are the answer, I think Wyatt is the answer. But he's also just just such a laid back, awesome guy. He flies planes. He literally flies himself from
Wow.
Greenville to here to come check on everything. But just one of those people that he always has time, or he makes time um, for others, and is very much willing to. No question is stupid, which I love. And I hope to one day, be him when I
Love
grow
that.
up. I want somebody that feels that way, when they're trying to go through the kind of scariness of starting a new business, and then everything that comes with that, because there's a lot of things you don't think about. I mean, you don't even think about HR, or that there will be problems at all. You're really just worried that your printers won't work, or the internet's going to go down. So for those bigger things, he's really been an amazing mentor. And then of course my parents, I mean, they're
Yeah.
the goal. They are hashtag
I
goals to
love
me.
that.
So,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Sounds like why it's been incredibly helpful, as well as your parents. And this is the point in the podcast where if you'd like, you can ask me a question.
oh man, I could just come up with a million right now, but no, I would. You know what? I would like to know what prompted you to start this podcast.
A variety of things. I was always interested in broadcast. Used to do play-by-play for hockey teams in college, and you know, a lot of it was very scrappy, where I was figuring out all the internet broadcasting stuff myself in 2008 or 9, whatever year it was, and um, I just had always been interested in that. And then, podcasts I have been listening to a bit. And, over the years, it just seemed like a good way to get involved in broadcasting again. Additionally, something that I enjoy. And, I always want to create positive impact. And so I'd been thinking about what am I going to do for a podcast. And one day it just sort of hit me. I've met all these incredible people that are doing great work. And, um, that's what a great way to sort of put them out there is to create my own podcast that also provides me an opportunity to sort of build my voice in media. And it's something that I can be excited about working on. So that's really it.
That's awesome. Sounds like we kind of had similar motivations for this. So, I think that I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. I love, um, and I think that we both kind of just, in a way, want to make the world a better place if we can.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're both showcasing people that are doing really tremendous things or have been through really hard things that can help other people just by getting their voice out there. And I think neither of us have the following or the listeners that we want yet in terms of the growth level we want to get to, but every listener counts, and I think we're both
Yeah.
growing what we're doing. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that you've got a hefty list of, I've not been able to keep up. I've got to go back and listen to some more and definitely catch up, but we'll get there.
yeah,
I think, we're doing good things. And Todd and I always say, if we just help one person with the podcast, I'll be happy with that, because it is a cool experience in itself to just kind of chat with people, and we get the info. We get the tips and all the stuff from these people.
exactly. I mean, we get to have the conversations and make the connections, and then, like you said, if you help one person, it's awesome, and certainly something that I enjoy.
I love it. We can't wait to have you on, which is
Yeah, looking forward to
we're
it.
planning for early next year, but know that you're expecting. So
Yes.
mm, that is exciting in and of itself. But once, we'll definitely be sure to ask you some questions about that experience, because
Yes.
having been there, it's a whole new world.
Yes. Yeah, it's our second. It should be really interesting and looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. They're fun.
So, if let's just say everything, the universe just turns off tomorrow, it's all gone, what would you be most proud of?
Well, I mean, it's like I really would say my children, honestly.
Hmm.
And I don't mean that in like, oh, they're still alive. I think in general that they've just, my daughter, especially, she's about to turn 7, is just such a kind-hearted, giving person already. And so I can see in her that same, the modeling of what is kind of important in the world of being a kind person and a loving person. That is incredibly, like, it just makes your heart swell 1,000 times. It's incredible. But I honestly, I think that I'd be really proud of just, like, the things that I have overcome in general, just life, like, going through a divorce, the losses. I think it's important to me in this podcast to help people understand that you can make it through things that feel like the world is over, like the universe is collapsing. So I'm honestly, I think, besides my beautiful children, I am very proud of myself for coming out of those experiences and feeling like stronger and more capable and more enthusiastic about helping others than I even was before. So I am proud of that, and I hope that I help other people to feel the same way.
That's great to hear, and it's important to try to come out of difficult experiences better. And I'm so sorry for all this loss that you've experienced, and but it's really great to see how you're trying to do your best to make the most of it and share your learnings with other people.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And it's tough, but what are you gonna do? It's like kind of like trying to will COVID away. It
Right.
just won't. It just keeps coming back. So making the most of everything, I think, is kind of my mantra at this point. And I hope that kind of grows and that people kind of move away from this wanting to be, on one side or the other of everything. That life
Absolutely.
is so black and white. It's just, at times I get infuriated about it, and then I have to, no, that you're just letting them win. But I just love to see more cohesiveness and people to start to actually work together to solve problems, because I don't think it's helping anybody to be as divided as we are right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And you could go in that direction or not with this next question, but the last big question that I ask everybody, if you could snap your fingers and fix one thing in the world, what would it be, and how do you think that change would reverberate?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it'd be easy to lean on the last answer, but I mean, honestly, I think I would. This is a tough one. I think I would probably snap my fingers and have n- get rid of cancer. I think that could, in and of itself, cause a ripple effect of happiness and less strife for a lot of people in this world. And as far as, especially when it comes to people getting, children having cancer, younger people in general that you just don't expect, and my sister-in-law being one of them. It's a brutal thing, and if it would just be really nice to not have that be a looming thing in life. And also, I think people in general would be, I think that's where a lot, we always say, like, hurt people on our podcasts. And I think that a lot of the hate and division and all of that comes from people going through loss and things like that. And so, I think that would be a pretty nice thing to get rid of.
I would be very, very happy with that. And, I wish we could. And hopefully I mean, there's certainly
Yeah.
plenty of people working on it. Hopefully they're making good strides.
Yes. Keep working on it, people.
Yeah.
If I could have done that, if that could have been my direction and I could have done it, I would, but I'm not nearly that smart.
There's some science minds working on it, and we'll count on them. And
Yes.
it's been awesome talking to you and learning your story. I'm sure others listening are really excited by it as well. How can people best support you and your impact?
Well, definitely go check out Next Page podcast. I think that, whether that really is something that that we're both, Todd and I are trying to not only grow, but just like get the word out. But, it's, other than that, I'm always kind of working on some kind of fundraising, volunteer stuff. So, even just reaching out if you want to be a part of the American Lung Association, you want to be involved with any of these other things that I've mentioned. I'm always looking for fellow people that are willing to give their time and help others, and then obviously come get a pretzel and a beer at the beer garden, because that's supporting a lot of people, at least our 60 employees. So yeah, those are some ways you can definitely help me out, and I really really appreciate you having me on here to talk about all this.
So happy to have you, and look forward to hitting up the beer garden next time I'm in Charleston, and also look forward to joining you on Next Page podcast, and also just generally keeping our conversation open and growing.
For sure. And I think that, you're doing great things here. And I'm just, that it's just awesome, like we keep saying, to connect with like-minded individuals who are trying to do better.
Thanks for listening to this episode of People Are the Answer. To find out more, go to peoplearetheanswer.com.